I haven't found these before, so
we're now going to be subjected to a series of horrible backgrounds, aren't we?
Welcome to Waverley Borough Council, Stephen Spence.
Right, okay, I think we're 1 minute past 10. So are we now live?
We are now live, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you very much. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Farnham Board on 22nd of January. We got a pretty packed agenda, but there's some good stuff here, I think, that we will discuss as we go through the meeting. This meeting is being streamed live, so just to remind you, please, of the usual protocols. Could you please mute your microphone if you're not speaking, and please remember to unmute it when you are. If you'd like to ask a question, please either use your raise hand facility, assuming you've got one, which is the blue hand down at the bottom, or put a note in the chat. And if I don't see that for some reason, perhaps somebody could just give me a nudge. Other than that, we're all very used to these meetings, and I suspect we will be meeting virtually for some while to come. But things are improving generally in terms of the reduction in the numbers of those infected. Certainly in Surrey, we're now below 500 per 100,000, which is still an horrendous number, but a lot better. The health system is coping, and the vaccinations are moving forward. So there is some reason to be a little bit hopeful that, you know, we're now on hopefully the last haul. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about Farnham and the progress that we've made on the various initiatives that now I think probably we've been working on for the last year or so. Can I start by first of all introducing Simon Duke? Simon, can you just, so Simon, I'll just get him to say hello, but Simon is relatively recently joined Surrey County Council as the Group Manager for Infrastructure and Major Projects, and indeed will be taking over from Chris within the next few weeks in relation to this project. So the timing of that is to be sorted out, but there will be a good handover period, and you know, Simon will be well up to speed by the time that Chris steps away. I think probably to have a bit of a quieter time, which I'm sure is well deserved.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. So Simon, do you want to just say hello?
Yeah, morning everyone. It's a pleasure to be on the call and to meet you all today. I know that I have to fill some big shoes in Chris, so I've been made aware of the amount of contact that he has with yourselves, and I look forward to forging a really positive relationship with you all and delivering some benefits in and around Farnham.
And you know, apart from your extensive experience, you have spent at least one, if not two, spells at Highways England, so which I think will be a very useful connection in the context of some of these discussions.
Yeah, hopefully I can use the contacts I've still got. In fact, we've got a meeting with Highways England this afternoon.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on then to item 2, which are the minutes of the meeting, of our last meeting held on the 20th of November 2020. I haven't seen that there are any comments or inaccuracies that anybody's flagged up, so can I take it that those are agreed? Thank you. And any of the matters arising from that we will pick up.
Sorry, Tim, I'm not happy with the minutes.
Okay, why is that, right?
Page 4 of the minutes, the list of things agreed as following short-term improvements. The last but one of the first set of bullet points says VMS height warning for a Recklesham Railway Bridge. I think VMS and VAS are the same thing. VAS I know is vehicle activated sign. I presume V is vehicle movement sign or something. I took that to mean we were going to get more signs. But when you read on into some of the stuff that Chris has written, or maybe it's the OIP, it talks about replacing the existing signs. The existing signs have only been in about 18 months or something, and they do their job. So I'm just a bit happy about why that's happening or replacing it. And I'm certain that I didn't at the time interpret for railway bridge, meaning they're going to try and put some new ones in on the A31. So I think that needs to be a bit more precise, please.
So, Chair, I mean, it's like a lot of minutes, isn't it? And I appreciate Wyatt's point, because obviously we always fall back to the minutes if there's any debate and dispute. But it's like anything else, the devil is always in the detail. And what we will be doing is working up a proposal for consultation, just as we're doing with the HGV restrictions. So although that's a line and it just drops the comment in, there will be more work on that. We will be working it up, and we will be talking to Wyatt and other local members and the public as to what the art of the possible is. What we were looking at there, and I appreciate the signs are in, but we're still getting bridge strikes. So what we're looking at is whether or not we can get signage there that actually can register the height of the vehicle and give a very detailed warning of that vehicle to that vehicle when it's trying to get through Recklesham, that it can't, basically. So yes, we appreciate the signs are relatively new. We feel we need to do more work on them. So it's not a matter of ripping them out, it's a matter of reinforcing it. And if necessary, if we can get more intelligent signing there that actually can tell the driver, you are too high, you cannot get under this bridge, then that's what we'll be looking to do.
So can we create an action for you and I and others to meet and discuss that through? Because there's a lot of work being done by professionals in the highways department to come up with what we've got at the moment.
Yeah, that's no problem. We can do that. It's like a lot of other things at the moment. Our concentrations on the HGV access and getting that sorted out. So yeah, no problem in sitting down and going through what exactly it means.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't suggesting it needed to be done tomorrow. I just didn't want to be going down an avenue to be blanking it off.
Okay, well, we'll record that then as Wyatt as an action point, which we'll follow up.
And Chair, if we could just go down to the bottom of the page where not the last paragraph, but the previous one starts, Councillor Ramsdale, then runs on to talk about avoid rerouting HGVs. My point wasn't about just HGVs. My point was rerouting through traffic, especially HGVs. And it's that through traffic, whether it's white van man or a great big HGV or lots of cars, that cumulatively are creating most of the damage in central Farnham and up the road and the like. So quite like which slightly differently.
Whereabouts is that, Wyatt?
I'm on the same page of the minutes.
Which is page what?
4. Go right down to the bottom, and there's a paragraph Chris Tunstall noted. Then above that was one Councillor Ramsdale welcomed.
The report.
And asked the possibility of recategorising roads to allow sat-navs to...
Yes.
And then instead of just saying rerouting HGV,
right,
rerouting through traffic.
Okay, just for clarity here, sat-navs do use road classification, but they look at the shortest routes, the most in terms of time or in terms of distance. They do try and keep on categorized routes, but that's not necessarily always the case. With HGVs, then it is slightly different. They do tend to try and use the categorized roads. So I think
I'm not wanting to have the argument now. I'm just wanting to say that what I said isn't what's recorded here. What I said was through traffic, especially HGVs.
Okay,
Okay,
we'll
change
change
that.
the wording to reflect that
we
then.
can change that.
Say the wider conversation will no doubt touch on a bit later anyhow. So,
Thank you, Tim.
okay, thanks very much, Wyatt. Okay, with that amendment, I'll take it that the minutes are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 then, any questions and queries? There aren't any. So we will move to item 4, which is the optimised infrastructure plan. So I think, Chris, you're going to introduce this and then pass over to Jonathan.
That's correct, Chair, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Fiona, can you bring up the next slide, please? So this is the plan that we promised back about March of last year. Jonathan will go through as to the information they've taken on board and the recommendations that are coming out of it. What I want to do is just outline the process, and we will also talk about the consultation. So in terms of the plan itself, it is still draft. So we are looking for input, and we will go out and consult, but we're also looking for input from the board, because I appreciate the board has only really had the opportunity of looking at this since before the weekend. So it hasn't had a lot of time, and obviously the partner organisations themselves need time. So the whole consultation exercise will be not only with members of the public, but with board members and their respective organisations as well. Normally we wouldn't do it this way, but time-wise, to keep the progress as to what we promised, this is the best way of dealing with it. Jonathan will go through and will give the opportunity to have questions on the particular detail. But I think the key point here is this is the draft. This is what we're wanting to work up. We are looking to go out and consult starting mid-February. We had to hope to go out earlier. It will be for a 4-week consultation period. We would look normally at much more than that. But the point I'd like to make again is this is the draft outline programme. This is the types of schemes that from the technical review we feel are the best schemes to take forward to address the issues within Farnham, particularly in terms of the vision that we agreed a few months ago. So it is the start of the process still. It's part of the process, not the start, part of the process. As we develop the schemes, there will be specific consultation on the schemes themselves. So this goes back, to be fair to Wyatt's point about the signage. All of these are just schemes, outline proposals that we think will address the needs of Farnham. When we actually get these schemes worked up, on the assumption that you agree these subsequently, and we're looking that this will be the May board that it all comes back to, we will work them up in great detail, and obviously those will then be consulted on again. Now, I appreciate, this is all time, but with the experience of Farnham in the past, the number of reports that have been done that have never got anywhere, and there is this genuine feeling, which I hope, well, I know the board have got, that we have got to take everybody with us. So it is this step-by-step process. Well, that's my outline of it, Chair. If anybody needs to ask anything specifically on that, Jonathan will be touching on the detail, and he will also then touch on the consultation and how we're looking to do the consultation. But happy to take any quick queries now.
Yeah, I think, Chris, no hands are up, so we'll move straight to Jonathan, if that's okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. If you could move to the next slide, please, Fiona. So an overview of the findings. We've provided quite a bit of detail in the board report, but I'll just provide a brief summary here. So the IP is the next key milestone in the infrastructure programme, and it's been developed in response to both the vision statement, but also to wider policies that we need to take into account. So it's proactively responding to emerging national, regional, and local policies. It's also taken account of the wide range of previous studies that have been undertaken over the last 20 years. So we've taken into account all of that intelligence and lessons learned from that previous work. We've drawn on extensive analysis of data in terms of the transport models, but also evidence on transport carbon and the problems in the town centre. And we've also drawn on all the lessons that have been learned from the issues raised at the recent local liaison forums. I would emphasise that those LLF sessions have been particularly helpful for us in drawing on detailed intelligence in some of the areas across the town. So the OIP itself explains the policy context for developing the strategy, the current and future challenges that we're facing. It sets out a long list of potential options in response to the issues we identified, and then it sets out the process for the assessment of those interventions and schemes, and also how they could be packaged together. A particular point I'd like to raise here is the importance of tackling the climate emergency. This is a central theme in the developing local transport plan for the county. It's obviously a critical issue that's going to be affecting transport as we move forward, particularly given the stubbornly high carbon emissions from the transport system. We do need to make some fundamental changes. In particular, we need to be able to facilitate that behavioural shift towards more sustainable lifestyles in the town, including thinking about the way that people travel. But we also need to improve and transform the sustainability performance of infrastructure. So whenever we build anything, we need to be taking into account the carbon implications of whatever we do. So the process that we've worked through, it identifies a long list of potential options that we then appraised using our sifting tool and packages were developed. The strategy for the OIP then comprises the key components based on different themes. It identifies a series of statements for each area of Farnham, so these being North Farnham, South Farnham, the town centre and the A31 corridor, and then it sets out an indicative implementation programme based on the quick wins, i.e. the short term, the medium term, when we'd be focusing on the bulk of implementation of many of the capital schemes, and then potential longer term interventions beyond 10 years and beyond. Next slide, please. In terms of objectives, I mentioned the importance of rapidly reducing carbon emissions, but we've also identified the importance of well-connected communities by all modes in terms of walking and cycling and public transport. And one of the key themes that has been coming through from the LLF sessions and from our evidence is the problems that particularly with walking due to narrow pavements, high traffic flows and fear of traffic. So we do need to tackle that. But we've also identified some significant challenges with bus services. So for example, if you're a young person wanting to get to Aldershot or Guildford in the evening, some real challenges in terms of getting around Farnham, but also to other areas. It's critical that whatever we do, we continue to maintain the economic vitality of Farnham. Obviously, it's a prosperous town with good productivity indicators. Well, certainly has been a dynamic town centre with a very strong independent retail offer and food and drink. And obviously, as World Craft Town, it has some real unique USPs. We need to ensure that whatever we do, we don't damage the economic competitiveness of the town. And then the final component, which is really a central driving factor behind much of what we're trying to do, is improving the quality of place, recognising that Farnham as a town has distinct heritage qualities. It's surrounded by beautiful countryside, but it's being severely impacted by traffic. And we've known that for a long time, and we need to take real action to address the problems caused by traffic in the town. So those are the objectives that have been driving the OIP. Hopefully you'll see that we've developed a programme of interventions that will support all of those objectives and lead us to a better Farnham. In terms of the next steps, clearly we've set out the ambition to consult from February onwards, and I'll go on to that in a moment in terms of the detail, but we'll be providing people the opportunity to engage with the material on the OIP, and that feedback will be really important in terms of helping to shape the forward programme. And clearly this is as I said, this is a milestone in the process. Significant amount of further work is needed, and I'm sure that you will all recognise that in terms of the document. It's an indication of what needs to be done, but much more detailed technical work is needed. And that needs to cover both the quick wins, ongoing development of the work around the 20 mph and the HGV work, but also development of the programme of measures focused around the key areas. So, for example, we'll be looking at some more detailed work for North Farnham, for the South Farnham area. Clearly, a lot more detailed work is needed for the town centre in terms of developing the proposals there. And also, you're pleased to know that we'll be further progressing the options for the A31 at Hickley's Corner as a potential major scheme with the Department for Transport. So a substantial amount of more detailed work will be taking place over the next 5 to 6 months. Next slide, please. So in terms of consultation, now is the right time to engage with stakeholders and with the public on the findings and recommendations. And it's very important to think about what the objectives of this will be. First of all, we need to ensure that people have a common understanding of what we need to tackle in terms of the challenges in the town, but also the opportunities and options for improving infrastructure. We need to be able to communicate the critical issues to be addressed, including the behaviour change that will be needed in the way that we travel around the town to meet our objectives. But most importantly, this will also help us to understand the level of support for schemes to provide that foundation for moving forward with projects. We're proposing that it will commence on the 15th of February with 4 clear weeks before the start of the pre-election period, as Chris has already explained. And in terms of the format for consultation, we're developing a virtual consultation room, which will essentially be a virtual environment where you can walk into a room. We're considering either a virtual town hall or a virtual maltings. We're currently exploring the options there, where we'll have a series of boards setting out the key findings from the OIP, so 8 to 10 boards that people will be able to read virtually. We'll also provide a public-friendly summary of the document and a draft for consultation version of the OIP that will be worked up with graphics, maps, and images, so that to enthuse people in what we're proposing. And there'll be a number of consultation channels. Obviously, we're going to have a dedicated website. There's also going to be an extensive social media campaign. We're engaging with the Town Council in terms of developing the leaflet drop, and clearly also media engagement will also be important. In terms of talking to people, we're looking at online Q&A sessions and further liaison forums. But the full details are currently being finalised for that, but looking at a live date of the 15th of February. Next slide, please. So if I could now hand over to Tim in terms of taking the recommendations, but before then, I'm also conscious that there's going to be, there are quite a lot of questions and comments that have been raised on the draft OIP, so is now the right time to take those questions?
Let's pause there, Jonathan, just at the moment, and let's just take a few comments on the sort of more general comments, and then we can work out whether or not now is the appropriate time to deal with some of the detail, or whether we will do that in a different way. So can I start then with Jeremy Hunt, please?
Thank you very much indeed. And I just I really want to start, Tim, by saying I think this is overall absolutely fantastic piece of work. I mean, it is incredibly thorough. It is well thought through. I've got a few suggestions about some of the details. I know lots of other people have as well. But I think overall it is a very, very impressive and thorough piece of work. And these things have to be thought through really carefully, because we all know what we want to do, but we also know these things can go wrong. And I can see that a lot of thought has gone into it. So I really want to say that partly as a sort of farewell thank you to Chris, because, you know, I think you've been an incredible force for good for the transformation of Farnham. And when we finally do have a pedestrianised town centre, I've always said I'm going to lie flat in the road where cars once went. And I want to invite you to come and lie next to me at that moment, Chris. But anyway, thank you. And thank you, Jonathan, for your hard work as well. Can I just make my small comment? I mean, first of all, I think other people are going to talk about rerouting the A road that goes through the middle of Farnham. And I looked at some of the email correspondence on that. I actually do think we should go for that. I think this is a time to be ambitious. And I just wanted to offer to intervene with the Department for Transport Grant Shapps, because I know one of the reasons that's been sort of left out is because it's not within Surrey's control, but I wanted to offer my support for working with you to do that, because I think that's something worth doing, and you know, and I think now is a good moment. My only real comment was that in the annex, the timescale for fully pedestrianising parts of the borough and Downing Street, which I appreciate is only an option, it's not a confirmed recommendation or decision at this stage, but the timescale was put in the medium term, so 3+ years away, rather than in the short term of 1 to 3 years. And I just wanted to ask everyone to reflect on that, because that will be the single biggest change for the town centre to swallow. And I sometimes think if you push it away to the medium term, we might lose some of the incredible momentum that we've got at the moment. And there's a risk of going back to the inertia that unfortunately has characterised this debate for the last 2 decades. So I just wanted to ask whether there's any possibility of bringing that forward. I think that would also involve bringing forward the converting of Union Street, South Street and the other part of the borough to 2 ways. And my other reason is just that I think if there's going to be disruption, when we are redoing the east of the town with the Gostrey development, I think people are going to be expecting a degree of disruption in the next 3 years. And I think it would just be easier for the town to stomach doing it all at once. But my final reason why I think we should look at this is that in a way, this whole project started, as Tim knows, because we realized that we had a pollution emergency in the centre of town. And I think that waiting any longer than 3 years to make the centre of the town safe for people on foot with young children with those illegal pollution levels just wouldn't show the momentum people are expecting. That was my only point.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Jonathan, what I'm going to do is take a series of comments now from individuals, and then we'll scoop up at the end and see what the best way to take this forward is, because there will be, I'm sure, suggestions of things people would like to see changed in here. So, but let's just work through a few on the list first. And John Ward, you're next.
Thank you, Tim. Well, first of all, I will be probably reiterating some of what Jeremy has said, because I totally agree with it. I really want to thank Chris. He's been very approachable, very responsive, and I'm sorry to see him go, but he has done a fantastic amount. This is a great report. You will not be surprised, seeing as I sent you an email and a map recently, that I really am very, very determined myself that the A325 should be rerouted out of the town. It's been a crossover of 2 A roads. It's why Farnham existed from the days when heavy traffic was 3 horses and carts. this is a golden opportunity. I've read Chris's rebuttal of my argument, but I still don't think that what we are doing will be sufficient. Wyatt's already referred to it, to get more of the through traffic out of the town. If you look at my map, you can see that the moving it along the bypass does not increase the actual overall length. So it should actually, hopefully sat-navs will pick it up and take them down the A road rather than minor roads through town of the same length. So I really, really want this to go. And if you've any idea of how serious it is, Wyatt and I never really agree on anything, but we are both agreed on this. And I think, you know, when you have 2 board members, well, 3 board members now really pushing it, I would like this to go to consultation with the public to let them have a view on it. I will toss in one other comment that came up last night at Farnham Town Council, where there were some comments about the nighttime economy of the town. And there were a lot of feelings within the council, and I think I would agree with them that perhaps somewhere or other, some more emphasis to the importance of the nighttime economy. People are horrified at the idea of public car parks being closed so that people in the evening would not be able to get into town and enjoy themselves. So those are my 2 points for what they're worth. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, John. John Neal.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, I just wanted to make a few observations at this point, if I may. First of all, as I'd also commend the work that Chris and the team have done, and thank you very much. It's a great report, lots of detail, etc. There's a couple of dimensions to it which I'd like to see a little bit more prominent, shall we say. One is I'll call it the political dimension, which is the need to deliver something soon, because, the public reaction is going to be, not more studies, not more papers, not more talking, something starting within a year, not within 3 years, which is really the point that Jeremy's just made. And the second dimension is about caution, if I can use that word. I read caution into this plan. It hasn't actually floated yet what it wants to do on MRM schemes. I know there's concerns about how we'd get funding in the current climate, concerns about climate change and carbon generation if we pour lots of concrete, all that sort of thing. And that's all obviously real. But at the same time, I would expect there to be scope for some major interventions in a couple of areas. I'll just give you a couple of examples on what I'm talking about here. On the town centre, well, I think Jeremy said it all, just the same as I would say. We spent a lot of time in the project over the last few months, really conditioning the public to active travel, thinking about buses, expecting cars to be scaled down in the town centre, etc. So they're conditioned to expect us to come up with something significant, I think. And, I think we really need to grab the opportunity now. There's a little bit of pain going to come along with it, but, people will understand as we do it, and they will adapt. And I don't think, I think we need to be a little bit, go ahead on that respect. So that's the point on that. And the second point relates to what I call the golden triangle, which is the area enclosed by Hickleys, the Firgrove Bridge, and the station, really. Now that area, with all the chaotic infrastructure that surrounds it, does need some imaginative design to solve it, really. And what I don't see in there is perhaps consideration that, we could be looking for some investment partners, so we could deliver some economic returns that would help to pay for doing something a bit more significant in that area. So I would like the project to, you know, take a view on that perhaps and see whether we can get together with people. Network Rail is the obvious contender, but there could be other investment partners because there must be scope there for delivering some commercial development on the site or housing development on the site. And then we would be able to create a much better space, maybe a 15-minute neighborhood center, as I've heard Paula talk about, you know, things like that. So I would like to, you know, suggest something in that respect. And the third area, of course, which I'd support on this major initiative side is, you know, in the Recklesham and the need to do something there because, you know, clearly the A325 corridor coming up from Borden is just a growing problem. And I think we need a major intervention there. So this is about caution, as I say, and the political need to do something soon. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, John. We've got a number of speakers and there's quite a long agenda here today. So perhaps if I could just encourage those that are going to speak next, if you're in agreement with some of the comments that Jeremy and John have made and with John's, could you just say that in one sentence and add any new issues, if you don't mind, and then we can get through on to the rest of the agenda as well. Wyatt, you're next.
Thank you, Tim. I generally like the main document. I agree all the thanks to Chris and to the team. I like the fact that we're going to get to consultation on the 15th or something like that, but we don't seem to be specifically including that the LLFs have got to run at the same time. We can't have half of them happening after we've started to move on again. So in the recommendation list, please, can we include that the LLFs need to run concurrently? So if the OIP consultation starts 15 Feb, that's when the consultation, the LLFs need to start, indeed perhaps even sooner. A roads, thank you, John. Yes, I was also amazed when you and I were in agreement on this, but actually I'd like to expand it slightly. To me, it's not just the A325, it's every A road that goes through that town centre area and has the problem. So I would add the A287 and I would add Upper Hale Road. And it's that network of roads. And just like John's drawing for the A325, all of those roads, there's a better solution going around the outside. I struggle with the annex, I'm afraid, Jonathan and Chris. The OIP indicates that it hasn't got all the LF information on page 2. It's only got 4 of them in. I mean, things like that could have been better worded, but when you get to the detail of that annex, it's quite clear that whoever wrote the stuff about the Recklesham bypass hadn't got the information that came out at the Recklesham LLF. And although I don't know the detail, I think that's the same for the others. When Chris has gone, which might be sooner, when other people have moved on, it's people like me and Andy and Chris and John Neal. There's not Chris and Stephen and John Neal who are going to be here when people say, well, why haven't we got the Recklesham bypass? Or why didn't Hickley's do this or that? Or why did we never get round to solving the Upper Hale problem? Well, we've really got to understand what's in that spreadsheet. So I'd like some really detailed meetings on that, perhaps running parallel with the consultation, but by the time the consultation comes to an end, I've got to be able to speak with authority and understand what that says. Finally, I'm not sure the complete document is clear about the trade-off we need to face. I think we need people to understand that. We've lots of people say, oh yes, we must have a Recklesham bypass. And then you say, but what about more houses? Oh no, but we don't want more houses. Or yes, we want a pedestrian town centre. Ah, but we want all the local people to still be able to drive across the town centre. Those trade-offs need to be brought out more, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Wyatt. I mean, I don't think there's any suggestion that all those other issues won't be addressed. This is just the phasing of how we will, getting through them, to be honest. So I don't think anybody's suggesting that they won't be addressed. Okay, next we've got Paul Follows.
Oh, thank you, Chair. 2 seconds, minor technical issues. So yeah, first off, thank you, Chris, for everything you've done, and particularly the way you've engaged with the board members. That's been really good. Jonathan, the phrase he used was common understanding of the issue. So going back to Wyatt's point, that does mean there are choices, and those choices that have consequences. So I'm hoping that this consultation will start to address some of those trade-offs and some of the incompatible issues in a reasonable way, so that residents and councillors and everybody else are all on the same page and understand what the consequences of our actions will be here. I'm going to drop in my usual reminder that Farnham isn't just the town centre. I'm sure you all know that better than me, but most residents don't live in the town centre of Farnham, so we need to not forget the impact on the outer wards, and certainly not miss out on any opportunities for them in the process. I think John Neal made a point about parts of the economy in Farnham being overlooked, and the night economy is one I would also agree with. It needs a little bit more looking at in this report. For an ongoing matter for the local authorities involved in this, there's obviously a lot of capital commitment that you're looking at here, and some of this in the long term, when you're talking about the transport options and active travel, it would be a good idea if we could start understanding what some of the revenue commitments are going to be here, so that in the long run we can actually support these capital programs, because the one-off spend is great, but it will be Waverley and Farnham and Surrey picking up the cost to actually run these, and considering our current budgets, that is, I think, something that we need to understand before we actually commit to them, however much that we might want to do them. But otherwise, no, I support the draft going forward to consultation. If this is an opportunity for us to be bold, which I think it is one of the rare occasions where it is an opportunity, we don't just need to consult with residents here. We actually need to sell them on the benefits as to why we're doing this. So obviously, my interest here is going to be on the ongoing comms and engagement. But I think at this point, certainly, very happy to see the draft go forward to consultation. So thank you all for the work you've done.
Thanks very much, Paul. Stephen Spence.
Thanks, Tim. Well, look, any report that has Jeremy declaring he will lie down in the middle of the road has got to have my absolute strong support. It's a cracking piece of work. Chris, Paula, Jonathan, Alex, and the others at Arcadia, thank you very much for it. Just quickly on some of the debating points that it has brought up, which will be an ongoing discussion. The quick win stuff on the Upper Hale Road with the HGVs and on Folly Hill is brilliant. There will be an ongoing debate about the 20 mile an hour. It highlights Round Hill School to be looked at further, but there is a debate about whether 20 mile an hour should be on a greater extent of the Upper Hale Road and other areas in North Farnham. That debate is there and is live. The Waterlane roundabout obviously will need some more consideration, and the report is saying that these debates will go further. The A325 discussion, finely balanced is what it was said. It is finely balanced. The arguments on both sides are understandable, but I think I agree with the view of the declassification of the A roads. That's very strong and positive. Another point I would like to make, I think we need to have a debate about the Farnham parking surplus being put into the infrastructure project to put some funds there to allow some of the quick win stuff to happen. That's a way of doing it, which needs to be discussed through with the local committee. So given the time and the other items in the agenda, I don't want to say any more than that. You've highlighted the ongoing debates that need to be there, including the Recklesham bypass, which I certainly think needs to be debated through, and I would support trying to do something there. But it is a very, very good initial piece of work, and I'm extraordinarily happy with it, and thank you very much for what you've done.
Many thanks, Stephen. And then finally, Andy, and then we'll pull this together.
Thanks, Tim. I obviously agree with the comments of my colleagues. It's the first time that there's lots of good work gone in Farnham previously in terms of the reports. This is the first time it's all been pulled together in terms of an overall picture, looking at the national context and things like carbon change. I thought Jonathan's introduction was really good, actually. It really sets the scene for what we're trying to do. And I fully support the sentiment behind what Jeremy's saying. I give Jeremy a lot of credit for having kicked the whole thing off quite a few years ago. And Wyatt, Stephen and I supported that. The only item that I have to be putting a couple of cautionary comments, actually. I fully support getting to full pedestrianised town. We can all envision how wonderful it would be, but I just have to say how difficult it's going to be to achieve that because of the nature of Farnham's road system. We all want to get traffic out of the town, but people still have to be able to get around the town. People have to be able to take their children to schools, to reach the station and so on. The nature of Farnham, the fact it's in a valley, that it goes up steeply from either side, you know, brings in problems about converting people to cycle, active travel. We should be aiming to do that, but it's going to be difficult. And I think we have to have an evolutionary approach towards this, you know, and also the other thing I'll throw into the discussion, that in terms of the economic viability of the town, a really major thing is to make Brightwell successful. Now, that's a partnership between Chris Nicholson and Waverley and Surrey County Council. We've got to connect the traditional town centre with the Brightwell, with the east area where we have the Brightwells development. We're going to have the Woldmead development. There's several other developments going on there. So, you know, as the council responsible for Central Farnham at the Surrey level, it's a very big thing to my mind, and also being involved with Waverley in terms of the Brightwell scheme. Connecting the town centre to that big area of the development is absolutely vital. But I don't think we're going to be able to pedestrianise the town in 3 years fully. But if I can be proved wrong, I'll be absolutely delighted. But I'll just make the point, it's an extremely difficult thing to do. That means we have to tackle it vigorously. We've got to get public behind us. But we've got to recognise that there'll be some public concern about pedestrianising the town completely. People still have to be able to get around the town. So that's sorry to Sean, put that one slightly negative note in, but it's within the context that this is a terrific opportunity for the town. Terrific work has been done, and all credit to Chris and the team and to the three councils working together in the way they're doing, Tim. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you all very much for your comments. And I would absolutely endorse those that have, you know, have identified this as a really good, positive piece of work. It's not, you know, we're on the journey. It's you know, it's the next stage. When I was training as a lawyer, I was always told never ask a question that you don't know the answer to. But I'm going to do that, and I'm going to ask Chris or Jonathan to accept. Not everybody has seen the correspondence with John Ward. Accepting the challenges around it, but is there any reason why we shouldn't and can't progress a conversation with government around the declassification of the A325?
None, Chair.
No.
The reason that it's not there is because the genuine feeling is that everything else that is there will result in the amount of traffic. I have to say, there is a perception that a lot of Farnham's ills are to do with through traffic coming up the A31, the 325 from outside of Farnham. The evidence in terms, and if we need to get into that Jonathan can show, is a lot of that so-called through traffic is actually Farnham residents wanting to access different parts of the town and so on. I mean, if you think about it logically, knowing how Farnham's laid out, why would anybody want to come off, go through a town centre and not use the A31? The issue with sat-navs is that sat-navs always give you alternatives. And with road classification, those alternatives don't take that into account. So sat-navs will always give you the alternatives. But the upshot is, it's a bit like the HGV. There weren't that significant numbers of HGVs trying to trundle through Farnham in totality. However, the perception, and that's very important, is that classification is an issue. So the answer to your question, Chair, is there's nothing stopping us. There is a slight impact. You've got to be aware from a Surrey perspective on your maintenance allocation, because that's given out on the basis of road justification. But to be honest, in terms of what's been invested in Farnham anyway, that is not mega money. So if that's the will of the board, my suggestion would be that we take this offline, still bring it back to the board, but we separate it from the OIP and we deal with it, perversely, having said that there's a timescale issue, as a quick win, that we set someone going on this to actually start the motions going. Jeremy's offer, it would be greatly accepted with Grant Shapps, because that's where, if anything, the delay would come in through working with DFT. But simply, no, there's nothing stopping us progressing it.
Okay, so I think that would be really helpful, Chris. So I think, you know, that in practical terms, then we would move that into a quick win, and then you would take forward a piece of work to progress that. It wouldn't do justice now to debate all of the points that people have raised, but you and Jonathan, I'm sure, will have a note of those.
Yep.
Can I suggest, bearing in mind the tight time scale that we have around the consultation, that that perhaps within the next few days, shall we say, that a short notice produced, picking up all of, or answering all those points, identifying which of them will then, well, identifying, giving answers to them, if they are going to be, if that means that there's going to be a variation to the OIP that's sort of flagged up, with a view really to circulating a final version of that draft, with it, you know, within whatever timescale you can do that within. I know you're not going to publish this IOP in this form, and it will be put into resident friendly speak. But I think if you're able to come back to the board next week with answers on those points, and if any of those aren't being picked up for whatever reason, that you kind of set that out.
That's fine, Chair. We'll do that. The other thing that I'd offer is we'll set something up uniquely for the board and partner organisations to be able to feed in during the consultation process anyway, so over and above, so that I am fully conscious the board have only had the opportunity to look at this basically over the weekend and a few days. So, as I said earlier, allow the board to actually feed in as part of consultation. You wouldn't normally do it this way. You'd have an agreed product and you'd go out. But I think this keeps the progress going. Yeah, thank you. And I think, you know, they say that we want to keep momentum behind all of this, which is the reason for going out of the pre-election period. Sort of slightly skews the timing, but we'll have to live with that. But Jonathan, are you happy with that? And you wanted to add?
That's exactly what we were expecting. We were expecting quite a few comments today, so we will ensure that we systematically pick up on those. And if we whatever we directly address, we will flag that to you. But if there are areas where we obviously we've had a range of different comments, or we'll address those in the note as well. Okay,
good. Well, if the board's happy with that, there are 3 recommendations. I think Wyatt, you wanted the reference to the LLP, the LLFs to be included in there. If we can just take that on board, that those will run alongside. Other than that, is everybody happy with those 3 recommendations, with the kind of those that what we've just discussed there in terms of coming back to you on the points you've raised?
I guess we'll be happy when we see the answers in that document.
Yeah, all we're asking now is the recommendation, which is to take this forward and get the document ready to go out for public consultation. You'll see the next iteration of that, picking up the comments you've made. So I think the recommendations cover that, hopefully. Chris, I can't see any.
I'm happy.
Tim, could I just ask slightly aside to that? When can we make this OIP draft, or whatever form it is, available to the town councillors, please?
Well,
yeah, now, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the caveat that this version won't be the one that will go out into the public domain, and that there will be some, it's an iteration. So as long as people understand that this isn't the final document, then yes, I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be. I mean, what we don't want to do is set too many hairs running, but I don't think there's an issue with the councils sharing it with their members.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any objection to just adopting the recommendations, the 3 recommendations there. So I will take those as agreed. Thank you very much. In which case we'll now move on to item 5. Can I just remind people we have half an hour, just over half an hour left. So we've got quite a lot to get through in terms of the updates as well. So item 5 is the 20-mile-per-hour review. And again, starting with you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Next slide, please. So that's the purpose of the item. If you recall, this came out of the HGV study at the last meeting, that there was a lot of issues came up about speed. So as a quick win, we initiated this piece of work. The study is there, appending as Annex A. There are some quick wins in there. We need to do further work on those, subject to your agreement. And there are some issues that need to be taken into as part of the wider OIP. But I'll just hand it straight over to Jonathan, and he can just give a very brief outline of the findings.
So next slide, please. So well, you can see there that we've provided detail in the board report, but we've systematically reviewed the speeds at the locations that we identified in the report, and we've developed a series of interventions in response to those issues. So we've looked at where speed data shows there are existing issues with the speeding, using from the survey data that we've examined. We've also obviously picked up feedback from the LLFs and consultation where there is that strong support for reduced speed limits. We've also highlighted where there are particular safety issues around the network, either in terms of the actual data or where people have identified concerns. We've also reviewed both national and county council guidance in terms of how speed limits should be implemented across the network, but also bearing in mind our agenda of improving and enhancing walking and cycling. We've identified areas where lower speeds could actually help in supporting more active travel, and also areas where we could help to reduce pollution through reducing speeding traffic. Next slide, please. So those were the processes, and from that, having worked through the options for the different parts of the network, you'll see here that we've identified a number of potential quick win improvements across the network in the town. When we refer to a town centre 20 mph zone, we'd be looking at the Borough and potentially Downing Street as the main town centre zone. In terms of the West Street Gateway, we've picked up on the issues with the school and the need to reduce speeds in the west of the town, and indeed taking account of existing proposals there. And that will be supported by a gateway feature, recognising that speeds are currently quite high there. In the east of the town, looking at an East Street Gateway, which would also include some physical traffic calming. At Castle Street, we'd be looking at a gateway measures to reduce speeds there, because the issue is that as people are accelerating away from the town centre up towards the castle, speeds are starting to get quite high. So we do need to start introducing some gateway measures to actually support that reduction in speed limit. And you can see here that we've identified also Upper Hale in terms of signage refreshes as a quick win, together with gateway treatments and review of measures at Hale School, and then a gateway feature at Heath End. What I would emphasise is that these are quick win measures that we believe could be introduced over the next couple of years. But we've also identified a number of further measures that should be considered as part of the OIP, which wouldn't necessarily be quick wins, but would be an integral part of the programme for the town. So I won't go into those into detail. They're covered in the next slide. If you could just cover the next slide, please. You'll see here there's a long list of potential measures that we're going to be picking up as part of the OIP programme and the further study work that we'll be now looking to take forward. So at that point, I'm going to sort of, I'm not sure if there are many questions on this, but if I could now perhaps hand over to Tim.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, no, some hands have gone up now. So we'll start with John Ward.
Thank you, Tim. I've already communicated this to Chris, but Recklesham Hill is exactly the same as Castle Street. People madly speed up as they're going out of the town. We talked about Recklesham Road earlier, and I think there's been a bit of confusion because I don't think there is a big problem there. I'm not necessarily seeking a 20-mile-an-hour limit, but we do need to look at speeds on Recklesham Hill.
Yep.
I started a speed watch there in 2006, and we submerged the police in the number of people we caught, to the extent that it had to go into an abeyance for a while. So I would like that added to the speed lookout, the speed consideration. I certainly wouldn't object to a 20-mile-an-hour limit, but I don't know that I'm particularly proposing it. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Wyatt?
I'll need to stop being careful at these meetings. I'm agreeing with John almost totally. Where is Recklesham in this? I thought it was being included in analysis. Okay, there's some previous analysis being done, but yet another speed watch over the last 2 or 3 years has shown that there's massive speed problems on Recklesham Hill. We need some action, please, and included on the list of things to do, even if it's not one of the quick ones.
Thank you. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Now, the thing I just wanted to raise was about 20-mile-an-hour limits in general. I mean, with school streets and various other aspects of this, is there any reason why we could suggest an approach such as the London boroughs, and even one we're thinking about in Godalming as well, where we recognise that the town centre really only being a part of the problem, that actually the whole area that you need to, the whole of the place needs to be turned into a 25-mile-an-hour zone in order to get the effect that you would desire. So in Farnham, obviously the town centre and the outer wards, I obviously recognise the issues regarding enforcement that go along with that, and you know there are issues that we need to deal with the police and signage and all the rest. But is there a good reason why the entirety of the Farnham wards, including the town centre, couldn't be at least considered for a general 20-mile-an-hour zone like the London boroughs?
And we'll take Jeremy and then come back for some answers. Jeremy.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to support John and Wyatt. I actually think we do need to include Recklesham Hill as a potential 20-mile-an-hour limit. I think, you know, the reality is the pavements are very narrow there. And even when traffic is going at 30 miles an hour, it is a pretty intimidating experience, particularly if you're a mum with a pram or young children. And I just think we need to recognise that might need some traffic calming, but I think people in Recklesham would be really disappointed if other parts of the town went to 20 and they weren't considered.
Thanks very much. Jonathan?
Just in response to those questions about Recklesham, the areas that were that we focused on for the speed surveys and the identification of those measures, they were in response to issues that were identified to us earlier on. But what I would emphasise is that this isn't whilst this is a particular milestone in the process, clearly the issues that you've identified are going to need to be taken into account. And in the case of Recklesham, the forward programme identifies precisely these issues of concerns about speeds, the impacts of traffic through the village, and the problems faced by pedestrians. So certainly, whilst it's not explicitly listed there, it is going to be taken actively into account as we develop measures for Recklesham moving forward.
Okay, well, I think, Jonathan, it would be just helpful to add that to the list so we're all clear on that.
Yep. We will do. So I think that was the main concern.
In
terms of 20 MPH, sorry, Paul's comments. Yes.
Yeah, that was about 20-mile-per-hour blanket across all the communities in Farnham, and it actually does go back. It doesn't help, I know, saying this, but this study came out of the HGV study, and it was meant to be looking at the quick wins. So it wasn't by any means saying that this would be the extent of looking at speed across Farnham. And I think what I'd certainly like to give Paul the comfort of is, yes, we do need to look at the whole area of Farnham, but that obviously would take much longer to do, and as such wouldn't be a quick win, but certainly can be incorporated if it isn't already there within the OIP.
Okay, thanks,
Absolutely.
Chris. And then Andy, did you want to add quickly to this?
Yeah, quick comment, Tim. I just wish to remind people that the Brightwell scheme is due to open in July. So I'm not sure if you define it as a quick win, but sorting out the borough and the Royal Deer Junction so that people will be happy to walk between Brightwells and the town centre is urgent. Whether that's a quick win or not, or the early part of the town centre regeneration, it's a semantics really. But we need to remember that the Brightwell scheme is due to open in July, and it's urgent to sort out the borough and widen the pavement, so if that's the solution, and sort out the Royal Deer Junction so that they give Brightwells a chance of success, if you like. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Yeah, no, point well made. Okay, so I think if we could just go back a slide, there are three recommendations: to note the outcome and recommendations of the speed study, agree the quick wins, and agree those interventions to be considered as part of the wider OIP set out in paragraph 13. And obviously then we'll pick up those comments that people have made. Is everybody happy with those recommendations? Yep, can't see any hands or comments to the contrary. Thank you very much. Then next item is the HGV review, item 6.
Thank you, Chair. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this was at the last meeting, one of the actions, and we made the action, but you did want this a bit quicker in terms of the programme for the HGV implementation or restriction. So apologies for that. Cheat a bit. I did get it out before the next board meeting, but I appreciate that was only about a few days before. If we can go on to the next item, which is the programme. Can I say on this, what we're aiming for is the signage to be up and the whole thing implemented by the 14th of June. Can I put caveats on that? That's given a fair wind. That's given working with the police, working with Hampshire, Highways England, the various road and freight haulage associations to get their buy-in as much as possible. So even the meetings, we were meant to be getting meetings set up. We have had a meeting with Hampshire. We've had a meeting and at a political level as well. We've had first stage meetings, discussions with Surrey Police, and we are trying to get the other meetings arranged. But as you can see, they're meant to be taking place on the 25th. So all this is assuming everything goes according to plan. We have looked at other options to speed it up. We have already speeded it up. It may not appear that way, but Tim kindly has taken the approval to advertise the TRO through Cabinet, because normally that would be done by the area committee, but the next area committee isn't until March, which would have added another 2 months into the process. So we have got urgency built into it wherever possible, and that Cabinet report is hitting on the 26th of this month. So all things being equal, we will have the necessary approval by the 26th. We've looked at the various options that are open to us in terms of temporary and experimental orders. Temporary order is very clear. It's to do with life and limb. A temporary order cannot be made permanent. So you would have to go through the same process as this to make the order permanent. But obviously a temporary order would need all the signage. So if for some reason it didn't get through, worst case scenario, then you've got a load of signage up that's been paid for that's going to have to come down. And particularly on Highways England network, that is exceptionally costly. So it is not recommended at all for a temporary. Temporary as well can only last for 18 months. So you've got to move to making it permanent anyway. You're putting off the bad news. You're putting off the delays basically with a temporary, but you've still got to go through the process. Experimental, that's another option that's available to us. But experimental is, as it says, it is about experimenting with the proposals. Again, it's 18 months. It can be extended, but normally that would have to be by Secretary of State approval. You wouldn't have to go back out again on that one, but the whole of the 18 months is effectively your consultation period. So it's not a matter of giving one bite over a couple of months here, and then that's it, the order's in and we're away. This is about 18 months. We will be getting comments back and we will be having to deal with those comments. Potentially, although unlikely, we could end up at a public inquiry if one of the statutory objectors, statutory consultees, the list that you've got in front of you there, objected. We could have to call a public inquiry, which would delay it tremendously. Why I say potentially, there are two reasons why that could be called. One's about affecting loading and unloading. Well, patently this wouldn't, because what you're addressing is through traffic. The other is if you've got PSVs. And again, we're not proposing at this stage, as we're developing the order, to ban public service vehicles, put those in the order. The order itself would be a 7.5 ton weight limit. There has been debate and discussion does that mean HGVs? Does that mean LGVs? Real confusion about definition of what a large, some people use it as light goods vehicle. Actually, it's large goods vehicle and they can be up to 44 ton. So what we go by is not the acronym, we go by the weight, and it's the laden weight, and it will be 7.5 ton. So again, we're not recommending the experimental orders. So what we're recommending is this process, Chair. More than happy to take any questions.
Okay, Chris, I mean, I know you wouldn't want to tarnish your justifiable record for delivery, and I know you'll want to get this as part of your legacy delivered as quickly as you possibly can. So there will be, I'm sure that wind will be blowing strongly behind you and others to ensure that that happens. Can I ask, please, Stephen and Wyatt, to be pretty brief, because we are now starting to run short on time. Stephen.
Thank you. The decision to ban the trucks on the Upper Hill Road and Folly Hill is the important part for me. I don't like how long it takes, but I accept how long it takes. I would be quite content for us to go forward with that 14th of June date. One question, if the public inquiry came up, can you move to put the experimental one in place anyway, despite the public inquiry? And the last thing I want to say is, and are we able to put some comms out on this, that we're doing it, that we're going through this process, so the word starts getting out much more that we've made this decision and it's just a question of going through the time frame now?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We'll come back to Wyatt.
I'm really happy with everything that's been said about North Farnham. Totally agree with what Stephen said about the date and indeed the comms. But where's the rest of the town in this? I mean, I understand why we had the HGV study, but West Street, East Street, are vehicles trying to get around the town centre? are they on the longer time frame? Just want some assurance of that and something to appear.
Okay, Chris, thank you.
So going back to the comms, the answer is yes, we will. Ben's on the call, so we'll make sure we get something out following this meeting if this item's accepted. Can we drop back to an experimental? I think you will be seen to pervert the natural course. Yes, we could certainly look at that. I don't think, looking at it, and we just have to cover this off, we might even have to call on the auspices of Jeremy, but I don't think the rationale for a public inquiry would be met. I have to say sometimes, though, we think that, and then DFT are on the side of caution. But I think we can certainly look at that on an experimental basis, but I think you would be seen to try and circumvent. And of course, you've already got the objections. So they're objecting, full stop. So an experimental would, they're objecting to any order, whether it be experimental or not. But we can look at that, and we can certainly try and make sure that we don't move into the public inquiry stage. In terms of Wyatt's concern, the main movement is the shortcut from taking the corner off from junction 5 on the M3, instead of going to junction 4 at Frimley and ending up back on the A31 at Farnham. It's that shortcut. That's what they're aiming to do, rather than going on the M3 and down the Blackwater Valley. That's the key. And of course, the restriction restricts anybody, whether they're coming up from West Street, whether they're coming from the east. They cannot go up there if they're just accessing through. So it affects both directions. So we are in effect covering off both East and West Street by not allowing HGVs that aren't servicing Farnham coming down the A287.
I just want to reassure Stephen and the board that as Chris knows, I've been pushing him hard to get this implemented as fast as we possibly can, which is why I'm taking it to cabinet to, the bits that I can help and speed up, that we will do that. So it is frustrating. We would all like to see this in place tomorrow in an ideal world, but please just accept that there are processes to go through here to get the TRO in place, and but we will make sure, the team will make sure that they're on top of this every day to make sure that we certainly hit the 14th of June. In an ideal world, it will be sooner than that. But okay, I think unless there's any comments, any further comments, then we need to move on to the last couple of items on the agenda. So that is the recommendation to note the planned programme of work, which you're all familiar with. So I'm going to take that as agreed. Thank you. And then we're going to move to item 7. Paula, I'm afraid you're going to have to be pretty quick going through this. We've only 10 minutes left now to cover the last 2. So over to you, though. Or Chris, if you're going to introduce it.
I'll start. Next slide, please. So it's just progress today and key dates. In the main, that's all within the previous papers. When we come on to the end of the agenda, we give an update on what we're expecting to bring back to the next 2 board meetings. So next slide, please. Okay, I'll roll active travel programme and Brightwells together. You're aware we've commissioned WSP to do the active travel 2 bid. They are also looking at the Brightwells development, because the bid, which is the cycle bid, actually goes along East Street, past the Brightwells development and hopefully through it. So they are being tied together. It is still progressing. We are looking to minimise the 278 works, as you know, on the Brightwell development. Crest are very positive on that, and we are working that through. But we take the point that Andy made earlier in the meeting, that they are looking to open by June, July, well, July of this year. So it's critical we get that. So that is ongoing. Electric bus, apologies, we were taking that off because we haven't got an update. However, what I can tell the board is I am arranging a meeting with the Surrey officers involved to look not just at electric bus, but to look at bus patterns and options, because we are keen to get what we would term carrots in place first. So we provide the services that people are saying they would use if it were available, rather than using the car. And obviously the intent there would be they would be all electric, as with the other services that are in there. I've no further issues on that. So if I can pass straight on to Paula for the programme update. And as Tim says, Paula, if you could keep this fairly quick.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please, Fiona. Thank you. Using Jeremy's words, incredible momentum, and what momentum we've had. It's been a year, and I'm really delighted that through the great efforts of the team, we are still progressing on time. As you know, our next key activity is going to be the consultation on the OIP that we've released, which is effectively that foundation to then developing the OIP features in more detail. A significant point that hasn't so far been mentioned is that we are intending to give a briefing to board members around the what the format of this will look like. We've already ran various officers from Waverley and the Town Council past our proposals, but we would like to let the board know. So look out for dates hitting your diary soon on that one. We're also have been noticing from the LLFs the significant request for acceleration of any elements within Project 2 town centre improvements and interventions. And all of the various items mentioned earlier, the A325 by John Ward, the Royal Deer Juncture by Andy, the parking review by Stephen, all of those elements is what's going to be fit into the next iteration of considerations for Project 2, and we're hoping to accelerate anything we can develop early and we release for implementation to do that. So I just wanted to clarify that with the board. Finally, we're going to be, once the OIP is reviewed and we've got clarity of next step as project team, we will then revise the Annex A programme that you've received a copy of in a bit more detail, identifying key next steps, so that Wyatt, it answers your question around how will the rest of Farnham will come into it and what we'll be delivering in the course of the following 1 year. So I'm hoping that that will give you clarity there. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Paula. It's nice and quick. Thank you. Any questions or comments to Paula?
If we can move to the next slide, Tim, that actually shows the programme.
Yep.
It does. You can't actually read it, but it was,
yeah. I didn't say you could read it. I just said it shows it.
Yeah.
I mean, that if that hasn't been circulated,
we will circulate it with the minutes.
Is there anything you wanted to pick out from that, Paula, in particular?
The green rows shows effectively the key items. So, for example, business case development is going to be a significant issue, and we're currently working very closely with the FT and keeping a very close on government policy around what will be a successful format for taking forward a business case, either individually for each of our projects or collectively for the programme. And once again, we're going to present our proposal when we have clarity on this to the board and understand board comments before we go down one avenue or the other. So look out for that again.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. I can't see any comments or questions, so thank you. We'll move to the last item then. Andy, John, is there anything you wanted to say in relation to the LLFs?
Okay, Tim, I'll go very quickly through that. As you know, we've had 9 of these LLF sessions now. They've all been well attended and we've had lots of feedback. So I think we're all very positive about how that programme has gone forward. just a few points maybe to bring out. We talked a lot about some of the community issues, opportunities in the town centre, what we would like it to become, you know, street markets, all these other factors around, you know, the whole business as well, cycling and walking and how people feel about that sort of thing. And the provision for active travel and all those comments as well. In the major road issues, obviously there's been lots of talk about the big potential schemes and the areas that we've already covered. Certainly on the North Farnham side, we got a lot of input from there on a community initiative that they took, and with a slide presentation to cover what they wanted to say. So they brought out all sorts of things related to not only how they see the road problems, but you know, active travel and just the safety of walking around the town and getting the children to school and all these things. So that was a very useful input from them. We had a session with young people specifically, really mainly speaking to their leaders, the teachers and youth leaders. That was very progressive. And we actually got a couple of presentations from young people themselves on that, which was very smart of them, I would say. And it did lead to invites for us to go and speak directly to the children in the schools, which I'm sure we'd all like to do when that becomes possible for us to do. So that's the 2-minute version. I'll leave it at that if you like. Thank you.
Perhaps, Tim, I could just add a couple of comments.
Sure.
As a joint chair. I think John's summarised it pretty well, but I'd just like to emphasise what he said about North Farnham. That North Farnham, which Stephen of course represents, has always felt the neglected part of Farnham. But what happens in North Farnham is very closely connected with what happens in the town centre. And the community of North Farnham has really come together, and Stephen's encouraged it. And a local resident called Catherine Powell has done a terrific job in pulling the communities together. And that was possibly the best LLF meeting that we had, and an example to other parts of Farnham and what to do. So the overall process has gone extremely well, and it's been a really good exercise. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks, John. Yeah, really good, really helpful. And just to pick up on Wyatt's point that he made earlier, that the next round of the LLFs will coincide with the OIP consultation.
Will.
Okay, so that is the recommendation to note those meetings. Thank you very much. Oh, Wyatt, sorry, your hand's up.
Thank you, Tim. Just quickly to point out that despite what the agenda says, this was just John and Andy's report. You picked up the point about the LLFs, which is the biggest one. Just at the top of page 3, when they talk about the Recklesham meeting, it wasn't the Western bypass that people were pushing for, it was the Recklesham bypass. I hope that's just a typo, because clearly it wasn't the Western bypass, which would cost 6 or 7 times as much again. The young people LLF, the thing was that most of our speakers were a bit like me, but I wasn't speaking, you know, grey suit, grey hair, elderly gentlemen. We missed a trick there in not involving Dan Hunt again from the Lib Dems, who was in the ward in the north of Farnham. We'd involved him in the early setup of the LFs with the councillors. I think we need to expand our pool of speakers and the number of faces people associated with that are behind these schemes. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, perhaps you can pick that up then with the 3 of you for the next round. Chris, was there anything you wanted to say there?
No, Chair.
Okay.
I would confirm they've all gone. We had a slight issue on the business one, which we know we've got to redo anyway because it was bad timing. But they've gone really well, and as Jonathan said earlier, they've really provided some input. Wyatt made the point about he didn't see some of the stuff within the OIP. That was basically just timing, and that's not been forgotten, and it will be incorporated as part of the consultation process anyway. The draft OIP came out just before Christmas, and obviously we've had 3 or 4 LLFs in the new year, so it was just a timing issue, was that.
Yeah.
But they've been really positive, and we've got a lot of good stuff out of them.
Yeah.
Excellent. And thank you for your suggestion in setting those up originally. Okay, so the last item is any other business. I've not received notice of any other items that anybody wishes to raise. So can I just close this meeting by adding to the thanks to Chris in particular. I don't think this is your last meeting. I hope it's not. We have a meeting in.
I was getting a bit worried, Chair, that you were.
Yeah, I know.
Very early, but
people have been a bit premature, but
no, I will be at the. I'm here till April.
April,
so
yeah. So
I'm responsible. You can start clamoring and hitting me with the HGV and the OIP if that's not going well. I'm not
you can rest assured that will be the case, Chris. So,
yes.
But can I thank you and the team? I mean, I think we are making some really good and genuine progress here. What's really pleasing is to see the kind of high degree of consensus across this board, and more particularly, actually, I believe with the residents. I think we are taking them along with us on this journey. I mean, the vision statement was a good piece of work, and I think that sort of set the scene. I hope that the consultation on a kind of a resident friendly version of the OIP will give us some positive support for the steps. And what we're all then really keen to do is to see things happening on the ground, the 20-mile-an-hour zones put in and the HGV bans and so on. But we are moving forward. It's all of us, certainly our elected members, are always keen to get everything done yesterday, wherever possible. But this is such a huge and important piece of work. We've got to get it right, and we've got to explain and encourage people to see the benefits of what is being proposed, because not everybody will necessarily do that. But thank you very much to all of the team for all of your work, and look forward to catching up with everybody else, if not before, on the 19th of March.
Thank you very much, Tim. Great chairing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tim. Good chair.